Happy New Year! Every January, as we flip the calendar from one year to the next, people make resolutions to try and turn their lives around. We're more likely to join a gym or start a diet or establish a budget in January than any other month of the year. In my experience, January is also the month when people are most likely to try going to church for the first time in a long time, or maybe even for the first time ever. And they do this with varying degrees of success because, let's face it, churches can often be such weird and wonderful places.
The yoke of the devil has been destroyed.
Hail, hail, Lion of Judah, let the lion roar.
Some of these new churchgoers have documented their experiences on social media. So my producers have picked a few back to church TikToks to get my reaction. So let's go.
Jesus Christ comes again, and every eye will see him when he comes again.
Ooh. Okay. What can I say? You know, church is weird, and I kind of like it that way most of the time. I love how churches come in all shapes and sizes. I love how some services are scripted from start to finish with liturgies, and other churches are more charismatic or Pentecostal, and you never really know what you're going to get in those churches once the Holy Ghost starts moving. And I've spent a lot of time in those churches, the charismatic ones, and I've seen a lot of things, y'all. I've seen it all from convulsing and writhing on the ground to people speaking in tongues and casting out demons. And look, it might not be my favorite way to worship, okay? I don't always feel at home in that setting, but as I think about it, that's just my personal preference, you know, and everybody is going to have a personal preference. It's easy to look at people who have a different preference and say, well, that's weird, or that's wrong, or look at the way they worship and say that's unbiblical, as I often hear from Christians, you know, across these different aisles or whatever. And the point is, no matter what kind of church you go in, it's very likely that the stuff they're doing in worship probably comes from somewhere in the Bible. I mean, except for the preacher flying in from the rafters. I don't know where that is in the scriptures. Other than that, usually it's biblical in some form or fashion. And I think it's fair that a lot of people wonder why so many different expressions of Christianity exist, why so many different denominations, if it's all coming from the same God or the same religion. And I understand that question, but I would also ask, like, what if it's intentional? What if the church is diverse because God made it that way, because God loves diversity? You know, what if he loves all of it? What if he loves incense and tambourines? What if he loves silent prayers and shouts of praise? You know, what if it's not one or the other, but both and? And at the end of the day, I just don't think it matters much to God how we choose to worship him. I think what really matters is where your heart's at while you do those things. So no matter what kind of service you're in, I think it's important to judge the substance of what's going on instead of the style, as we often do. So that was an awesome start. Let's roll the next clip.
Your love is bustin', sing it with us. Your love is bustin',
I know this song.
only thing I put my trust. Bust, for real. Your love is dead ass.
She's trying.
Your love is dead ass. Even when I'm acting like a head ass.
Oh, we're not going to play the rest of it. The whole song is great. I know this one. It's pretty funny. I feel the need, however, to clarify that song is not actually a worship song that Christians are singing in church these days. It's a parody. It's meant to be funny, and it's kind of meant to poke fun at Gen Z in particular. But look, it's a joke, but the fact that it sounds enough like our modern worship songs to be confusing, I think might be a little bit of an indictment in a way. I think the church, it's fair to say, is facing a creativity crisis these days, especially in terms of our music. I try to listen to Christian radio these days because I'm a pastor and I feel like that's what good pastors do. But it doesn't take long, usually just a few minutes, for me to get bored or even mad, because so many of the songs I hear on Christian radio lack depth and lack authenticity, you know, and at least that's my opinion. And I do think there are good ones out there, and I don't want to paint all of it with one brush for sure, but so many of our modern songs, especially worship songs, have lyrics that to me just are super repetitive and even worse, they're self-centered oftentimes instead of God-centered. Sometimes it feels like we're singing to God to get him to do our will instead of asking him to help us do his or to show us his will. And that's one reason why, even though my church is kind of modern, kind of young, we still sing a bunch of old hymns on Sundays because I just think those hymns are deeper and more biblical. There is some hope on the horizon that I see because I've heard some newer songs recently that hit pretty hard and go deep, but we still got a lot of work to do when it comes to our music in the modern church. And sadly, I think that's why this video and this song are so funny. So great stuff. What's next?
Going to church for the first time on a Sunday, probably since I was a child. I don't know, I just felt curious for the first time in a while, and I thought, why not check that curiosity and see what happens? So let's see what happens.
Wow. Okay, hold on just a minute. I got to say something. Did you see that building? My goodness. I mean, that facility was just beautiful. And I think that's a statement in itself, how it stands out. It's stunning. I mean, these old church buildings, you know, they don't make a lot of sense anymore because they're like relics from a bygone era. They're big and they're old and they're inefficient. And our cities now are filling up with these high rises and skyscrapers that are kind of cold. They're made of glass and steel and they're more practical. But I think that's exactly why these ancient stone monuments are so important now. And I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago. This is just something I've felt more recently. The world is changing so fast. None of us can keep up and we all feel that angst. But I think these buildings kind of remind us that the Church of Jesus Christ has stood the test of time and remains unfazed, unchanged by the winds of change around us. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool that things like architecture and beauty can give people just a hint of hope. But I'm curious what happened when he went inside. Let's watch.
So just come out of church and quite liked it. I think I'm going to go next week. It's a different time because it's a Christmas service. Well, first of many Christmas services, so I'll go back next week. But I quite liked it. I feel good coming out of it. I felt good in there. And I think when something feels good, you've got to carry on. So let's see what happens.
Awesome. That puts a smile on my face. It's beautiful to see. I'm so glad he had a good experience. It's not always the case, you know, but he seemed to have a good experience. And he also seemed a little bit surprised, judging by the tone of voice, surprised that he liked it, which is a little sad to me, but I think that's just where we are now. People don't expect to enjoy church anymore. And I understand that, you know, I get it. Churches have a reputation for being dull and boring and maybe a little judgmental even. And that's a reputation that sadly we've earned, I think. But I also think most churches in the world today are full of warm and welcoming people who are just clinging to love and light in a world that's so dark and so hateful so much of the time. And so I really think that most people who don't go to church would really enjoy it if they tried. And I just love seeing the look on this man's face as he was leaving that service. And obviously, I hope he keeps going back and staying on the path that leads him to faith. That was awesome.
I was really hesitant to post this, but I'm 21 years old, and I went to church for the first time today, and these are happy tears. I grew up in an atheist household. I never was introduced to God. We never talked about Jesus. We didn't learn about anything like that. But throughout the past few years, I've seen signs of God in my life, and I really just wanted to let him in. And so I went to church today for the first time. And it was so beautiful. Everyone probably thought I looked crazy, but it was filled with tears. I just felt so seen and loved, and it was so beautiful. I can't stress enough how beautiful this was. And so if you're nervous to go to church or start going to church, take me as your sign that it's literally never too late. That was literally one of the best days of my entire life.
Oh, a little emotional with that one. That was good. You know, just when you start to think that the internet and social media are just full of darkness and lies, you come across something like this. You know, this girl telling her story And you could just see the sincerity on her face. The emotion was so real, and it gets you emotional too, you know? And look, if you're a Christian, these are the stories we should be living for. This is what should get us out of bed in the morning. And this is just an example of the church at its best. And Christians, we get a lot of things wrong. And if you're not a Christian, believe me, we understand we get a lot of things wrong. But when we get it right, when we get the love of God right, when we get Jesus right, I don't think there's anything more beautiful in the world. And I just wish I could, thank this woman to her face for sharing this story with the world on TikTok, because I'm sure the responses weren't all positive. I'm sure she faced some heat for coming out with a story like this one, or some eyes rolled or whatever. But I hope she's still showing up and falling deeper in love with God, because I believe God's madly in love with her and with you and with all of us. And so that's going to be hard to top. Do we have one more? Okay. Oh, okay. That's good. Perfectly awkward. It's such a sincere response from that young man. It's his first time at church. It said it's his first offering, clearly his first priestly blessing. And so how could he have known not to high five the priest? And I kind of wish the priest would have saved him the embarrassment by reciprocating it. It wouldn't have taken much, but I don't know. Maybe that was the first time for the priest too. I just have a soft spot in my heart for these awkward moments when they happen in church, because, well, I love how the ordinariness of like our casual life today breaks into and intersects with the sacred stuff going on in a service. But what it really shows me is that we're reaching people that aren't already Christians, and that should be what the church is all about. And so, man, young man, if you're watching this, I hope you'll keep going down that path you're on, and I'm confident there will be plenty of high fives waiting for you in heaven one day. And I don't know, Father, if you're watching, maybe be ready to meet Gen Z where they're at next time, Okay, I think that's it for today. If you haven't been to church in a while, maybe you've been hurt by Christians or by the church in the past, maybe you just never grew up going to church. I hope this video has inspired you to find a congregation or two close by to check out. And if you're seeking answers about God, or if you're longing for authentic community in 2025, just open up Google and search for a Bible-centered church in your area and go check it out. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel before you go, please. And thank you for watching. Hope you have a happy new year.